Our next speaker is David Mouritzen with a very interesting topic of innovative fish counters. Please.
First of all, on behalf of the fishmongers in the Nordic countries, I would like to say thank you very much to the Nordic Marine program for giving us this opportunity. I say this because the project I represent is very different from what most of you have experienced so far, I'm sure, during this program. I made this presentation some days ago with the aim of telling you what we have done. We are one of the projects that have actually finished the project, and it's reported, so there is a full documentation on what we did. But after listening to so many interesting presentations, I have changed focus to much more on why we did it and what we want to do next. Because obviously there is already a full documentation of the project. I hope you can forgive me for this. It might give some challenges for me during the next presentations, but it actually resulted in that I rewrote my speech during lunch. Dr. Empika talked about demand, and I was thinking, who is making that demand? It's you and it's me. But I was thinking, how do we change people's demand toward a more green? That's also one thing I heard, production or harvest. And I think one of the key issues will be to give people more interest in food. If we want them to consume in a better way, to consume better products, they need to be interested in food. Otherwise, I think it will be a general statement. If you are in a low interest field, you are not willing to pay any money for anything. You just want the cheapest. So we have to give people in the Nordic countries interest in food, or even better, seafood. I think involvement is one of the key elements to give people interest in another field that they already have interest in. During these presentations, I've written some words down. Let's call them buzzwords. You've so far been talking about food safety, traceability, documentation, consumer information, green growth, nutritional benefits, export and global trade, effective production, and much more. To me, that's all about bulk. It's a bulk world. And what we try to do with this project is actually to set more focus on culinary values, the gastronomic values, the cultural of the Nordic heritage within the food sector. Also, if we want to link up to the whole Nordic culinary with the René Redzepi and Noma and other, so many chefs pushing the Nordic agenda, we don't need to communicate bulk. I'm not saying that bulk is no good. It actually is. Big is beautiful and is a necessity for feeding the world. I obey and acknowledge this, but I believe it's not a good starting point for giving people interest in food. And if that's the main aim, which I believe it is, bulk is something you can do behind your back. Culinary values are very important if we are to succeed in what this project is all about, innovating fish counters. But if we are to succeed in innovating the fish counters at the fishmongers stores, which is not the supermarket but the independent little entrepreneur at the corner of your own street, we believe that these values are very important. And the innovative fish counter is what this project is about. But to reach our goal, we need to take a step back. That's what we concluded after getting together in the project beginning. Because we experienced that many of these small businesses spend way too much time on focusing on legislation, on documentation, being worried about if they comply to all the demands that the government authorities continuously put down on these people. So with this in mind, the project resulted in three main aims or goals. One was to create a common industry standard so that the Danish fishmongers, the Norwegian, the Finnish, the Swedish and the Icelandic fishmongers had some kind of a common ground to work off. Next step in the project was to put down some common rules for a Nordic Championship for fishmongers, because these two things was in close connection. We experienced already by trying to figure out what these rules were about, that in Denmark you have the interpretation of the EU's legislation different than in Sweden and in Norway. So in order to actually have a common fishmonger competition, we needed that same industry standard. And the last output we wanted to work toward was what to do next when the project actually finished. Because we knew already that this was just the first step on a long journey if we are to succeed with this. One of the first things we did was to build a homepage for the project so we could communicate a bit better, but also to tell the surroundings that actually we are doing something here. One of the things I experienced is different from this towards many of the other projects is that we actually have a political agenda. We want to change the world a bit so that bulk is not the main or the only focus for delivering good foods for the people, but we don't overlook the actually the small businesses that have the high quality, the huge variety, the service. These people are actually some of the lighthouses in our seafood culture. The common industry standard, this is just a screen dump from the homepage. As many of you know, we have to work with the HACCP program, the EU HACCP plan. We have to continuously do the right thing, making the right documentation, what is good practice, what is critical control points. And to a small business with a man-wife ownership, these things are just very theoretical and not very easily applied to their daily lives. So by doing this, we actually made some kind of a platform they can just enter, and we've done most of the thinking to help them. This, we believe, is the first important step to release energy from all the boring parts of running a small business to actually focus on being creative and renew their shops in order to be innovative. Then we also made the Fishmongers Championship and actually carried out one at a fairly high level in Denmark last year, where we tested the rules and got a lot of attention doing it, and also found out, unfortunately, that we still have to work on these rules because they're not complete. There are still differences in what they believe they can do in their respective countries. But what we found out was that it was a very good start to build a closer relationship among the European or Nordic fishmongers. Sorry. This is just to give you an idea of the 4 key elements in the competition. First of all, quality evaluation. In this world, most of the fish is not wrapped in plastic. It's the raw fish. Some of the fishmongers get it in as a whole fish, and they make the fillets themselves. So being able to actually evaluate the quality is key to this business. Then we have this handling of seafood, which also is to show the handwork, the actual, how do you say it, the whole story of being a fishmonger is that you have a specialty in cutting the fish. This is to show the public that this is no industry, this is handmade work. Then we also acknowledge that most people in the Nordic countries, even though we have a proud heritage of eating seafood for many, many years, it's not that anymore. So fishmongers also have to lean into these convenience agendas, making fish easy and not too complicated to go around. So during the taste for sale, they will be evaluated on how innovative they are in making new and exciting products for their consumers or their customers. And then very important also is the presentation. What can they do in the counters? Because everybody knows that if you have a fish counter that is just buried in ice, it will not make it will not give you ideas to a meal when you get home to your family. So this is actually one of the most important parts of the competition. Can you tease the people walking by your fish counter to actually go into the shop and buy the fish? Then at the end of the project, we spent a lot of time thinking how to make seafood more interesting for the future. I will present you for these ideas, and I hope that many of you, as I just elaborate on a few of them, will actually feel tempted to jump aboard, and afterward this presentation, maybe we can have some talks on how to collaborate on bringing these ideas into life, because collaboration will be a critical factor, I can already tell. One of the things we would like to do to continue this journey is to make a Nordic lighthouse. It's a word for a huge ship sailing around in the Nordic countries, picking up seafood, specialties and raw material. We would like to have some kind of regional perspective on it, and the boat will sail from, for example, Oslo to Copenhagen to Stockholm to Reykjavik, and will bring special foods from these seafoods from these countries to other Nordic countries, and will have a position in the harbor where people can come and buy and get a view into the Nordic seafood heritage. Then we have the Nordic Competence Program for Fishmongers, which is actually kind of in line with some of the earlier ideas. We need to exchange ideas through the student travel concept, but also within the fishmonger world, there's no education. It's much of it is self done, and only in Denmark we had a formal program, I think 8 years ago, educating people into this world. And we need to exchange knowledge and people in the Nordic countries. Then we need some Nordic fish ambassadors. We need people that are in the medias to speak more interested about Nordic seafood. It's not good enough that I and fishmongers and some of you speak passionate about seafood. Other people have to as well. Then we could also use some international branding, and we came up with an idea called Nordic Oyster Rally, where we set focus on a particular raw material, oysters. Everybody has oysters. Oysters is actually what I experienced. It's a raw material that traditionally has been harvested from wild harvest, but is now being produced and spent a lot of government money on making investigations into how to reproduce oysters in closed systems. So not only to be culinary about it, but also to support that there will be a great production of these oysters in Europe or in Nordic countries for the future. And then we need to know more about the fishmongers and how to support them for the future if they are to exist, because they struggle during the day to keep their businesses running. So hopefully some of you, I will try to make contact to you as well, will after this presentation or during the dinner, help to bring these ideas into life. Thank you.